The end of this week is going to be kind of a roller coaster of a bunch of transits that really do roll into one another to tell kind of an interesting story. And it's not all sunshine and rainbows, but there might be some interesting changes on the horizon. So I want to walk you through this so that you can feel empowered and knowledgeable for whatever's coming up around you. So let's jump in, and I'm actually going to share my screen and walk you through this chart a little bit so you can see what we're talking about and understand how to use the astrology a little bit, how to read the chart a little bit. So as I pull up the screen here, let's make sure we go to Luna. So here in Luna, we can do a couple things, including narrowing down the transits that we actually want to focus on today. So there are two transits happening on the same day that really kick off this week. As you can see, it starts on the 20th of July. So what we're seeing is on this day, on the 20th, we do have the sun trine Neptune. So this is actually showing us that Neptune is getting ready to go direct eventually. It's going to take a while because Neptune is a slow moving planet. It's the second furthest one out there, the furthest one being Pluto, who actually you can see is halfway through their retrograde just about. So if we look from the indicator would be from trine to trine. So over here, the first trine would show us, hey, this outer planet, the one past Mars, the one beyond us, really. So if you think about Earth and the outer planets, or also Mars, because he gets a pass in there because he's beyond Earth. So Mars straight back to Pluto, when they hit a trine with the sun, they're thinking about going retrograde. When they're opposite with the sun, they're about halfway through a retrograde. And when they have this other trine, they are just about wrapping up their retrograde. So we see at the same time, we've got the sun and Neptune having their exact trine this day. And the sun will actually perfect that opposition with Pluto later in the week. We are going to talk about that, and I'll show it to you as it perfects as well. But focusing on this, the sun trine Neptune on its own would indicate really great access to intuition, also confusion, because they're kind of the same energy. It's just a matter of are you using it, or is it happening around you? So if you're in the fog, do you find stillness or do you find confusion? Thinking about Neptune as the fog is a really great metaphor for how we're going to talk realistically, practically, and also optimistically about the next thing I want to show you. So if we take the sun off of the focus here, we can bring in Mars. And what we notice is Mars, yes, is sort of trine Jupiter. That will happen later. So we see like Mars has to cover 6 more degrees to get there. We also notice that the moon is with Mars. So that's going to make the Mars elements feel more personal. By the end of the day, because of how fast the moon moves, the moon will meet up with Mars. So noticing what Mars is going through this day is going to be important. And what we notice is Mars is exactly opposite Saturn on this day. So this is a tension between the two planets that are traditionally considered the malefics, but really what they are the planets that bring about challenge or strain or restriction or these things that become obstacles that we overcome. So they do lead to growth. They have their uses, but they do end up bringing things that sometimes are just not the most fun for us to have to go through. With an opposition is actually also of the nature of Saturn. So we see that tension, that restriction, that tug of war between the two planets represented as though they were both pulling on that rope. And so when we see Mars, which is action, ambition in Virgo, probably feeling a little bit wanting to be productive or super effective, all of those things, Mars really wants to get stuff done. Some of the ways I've been hearing people express Mars in Virgo have been, people who are all of a sudden like, I just need to clean out my whole garage. I have the energy to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it more efficient. I'm going to organize. So it's that energy going into what Virgo tends to do, the earthy, supportive, organizational, sometimes anxiety, depending on how the outlet you have for that. So typical Mars and Virgo advice from me would be to give yourself an outlet to express any physical energy that you have, release stress, get a massage, get something like that that feels very martial in its nature and allows you to allow your muscles to relax, allow your body to have the expression of any energy that it's holding on to, especially when the moon is conjuncted as it is. And with Saturn being opposite, it might actually be a good time to, go and have a service of massage or something like that. On a more social scale, because Saturn is a more social planet, we are noticing that this might bring some tensions between people who are working or perhaps overworking, and so we're thinking about the workers over here with Mars, and perhaps overworking because Virgo, and the way that maybe they're Saturn being the ruler, Saturn being the administrator, Saturn being the government, may not be seeing as well, because of course Saturn is also in Pisces. So Saturn has some blurred lines. And with Saturn, especially when we're thinking about Saturn as a representation of government or of leadership or of structure, we actually prefer if those lines would be a little bit more well drawn, well understood. And we are looking for a sort of reflective fairness with this. So one of the events that is currently ongoing that I think is really playing into several themes that are unfolding with the transits of this week is a really great metaphorical example or expression of these transits, but is happening in real life, is the strike with the Writers and the Actors Guild. It's people who are feeling like they are working too much for the compensation. So they are stressed, they are overdoing themselves, they are in conflict or in tension with the rules and regulations of the people that are in charge of their compensation. They're saying it's not fairly done. We're not being seen, we're not being understood. We need to kind of meet and have a balance here. Now, I'm taking this even further because we're going to jump ahead. They're all like one day at a time situations here. So we're going to bring all the planets back here. And we're going to say, so this was the 20th, noticing that we have this confusion, this fog between the two that might be there with the sun trine Neptune. So on this day, we might notice that there's a lot of, well, I don't remember you saying that. Oh, deflection kind of stuff. Alternatively, someone who's consciously using this, again, could really use this energy to apply it to positive intuition, positive intuitive growth, to organizing your intuitive business, to doing all of these things that help you recognize where there might be holes and gaps or plot holes in the story, and to filling them in and allowing that to be something that aligns with flow. So these are positive ways that you can use this energy. I understand that I'm bringing up some not so happy things along with this video, but that is a reality of life, and it is something that we are seeing as the expression of these transits right now. So want to be as realistic as possible, but also if you're feeling this way, how you can transmute that into something a little bit more usable and useful for you. So then if we jump ahead, the next thing we notice is that the sun on this day, you can see it's getting very close. The sun, if I jump a couple hours, on the 21st, is going to perfect that opposition with Pluto. So we are looking at these two right here. And this really just marks the halfway point between Pluto's retrograde beginning and its end. This, as a halfway through the point of the retrograde, it is a slow retrograde. It happens every year. So it's something that we're kind of used to in our natural cycle. But as we recognize it and as we acknowledge it, this is a time where the sun kind of sheds some light on the power dynamics that Pluto tends to represent, might unearth some information that shifts power a little bit and kind of gives us what's been going on since, I believe it was May that Pluto went retrograde. So if Pluto went retrograde in May and we're halfway through that, what have we been learning about power dynamics since then? How is this a turning point where we now take what we know and apply it and start doing something with it? What kind of changes go along with that for you personally, but also this is for the world. Pluto is a transpersonal planet. So as we think about Saturn and Jupiter being social, and you might see trends happening around that or something a little bit more localized in at least your nation, Pluto is thinking about the world as a whole, us as a collective group of humanity. So this is something that we're all going through as we all experience the transits together. But because Pluto moves so slowly, we are also noticing that this power dynamic thing may happen on an even more global scale. And so then we go to the very next day, and we're going to remove the sun from focus, because on this day, and I am going to bump us forward by the hours here so you can see, the sun comes into Leo, taking his sweet time. There we go. So the sun comes into Leo, and we see that that'll happen in the hour of 10 p.m. on the 22nd. So this stuff is happening later on the 22nd. But another thing that we're going to keep an eye on is, of course, Venus now has gone retrograde. So we see that she, during this day, in the 8 o'clock to more like almost the 9 o'clock to the 10 o'clock hour, right around the time the sun is thinking about moving into Leo, Venus is turning retrograde. So we see that she turns red on this, and you can see a little RX right there. If you're looking for a retrograde planet on your preferred program, you'll probably notice it's highlighted in red. It might have an R next to it or an RX that will refer to it as being retrograde. So you can see, just glancing at the chart, we see that Pluto is also retrograde, Saturn is also retrograde, and Neptune is also retrograde right now. The nodes spend a lot of their time retrograde, so that's why I'm not listing them off here. And now Venus has joined that party in retrograde. And in fact, by the end of August, many of the planets will be retrograde at the same time. Not exactly all of them. Some of them will like get out of retrograde just in time. But by the end of August, we'll have a lot of retrograde happening. Mars will not be retrograde because Mars did that at the beginning of this year. So we don't have to do that again for a while. So those are the things that I want to keep in mind. Then we have one more transit on the next day. And this one is actually going to be between Mercury and Uranus. So Mercury over here at 2248, Uranus, again, this is Mercury separating from the Uranus thing. So again, if we bumped back a couple hours, we would see this square being absolutely perfect. We see that a planet that represents change on a personal level is squaring a planet that represents change on a transpersonal level. So this is a change that requires action. Again, we're looking at the square being of the nature of Mars, so very active. And so with this, we might see on Sunday, I believe this is on the 23rd, we might see a lot of change happening. Some of it may be stuff that we didn't see coming, or it may be a very quick and drastic change. Now, is change always good? No. But is it always bad? Also no. So one of the things when I look at something like this is I decide that there's change coming, and I can be excited that there's change coming. And then when it arrives, I can work with it with at least a positive starting attitude. And if it is something that I wouldn't have been looking forward to, at least I had the time that was looking forward to it instead of double the dread. So I know it's like, again, not sunshine and rainbows, but this is a week of change. This is a week of action. This is a week of things happening. And this is a week of the world doing what it does and growing and evolving. And so we see that, and we see that these transits are saying, hey, those action points, those plot points in the story are coming up for us right now, and we get to see them happen. So I now have to figure out how to stop the share. There we go. So I hope that this is helpful for you. I hope that this information is digestible, feels actionable. Again, you are the hero in your story. So everything that's coming up is one of the plot points. It's one of the calls to adventure, and you get to decide how you handle that and what you're going to do with it. And I wish you the absolute very best. If you're looking for a mentor on your journey of becoming the hero that you are, I am about to open courses and personal mentorships in the Modern School of Ancient Wisdom, where I will help you with astrology. I will help you with folk magic. I will help you with healing techniques and intuitive skills and all of the things that I've grown to understand and have been trained in my entire life, so that you can have the benefit of my years of experience getting you there a little bit quicker and in a way that is tailored and aligned for you with personal support. So keeping an eye out for that. Hint, I'm going to be using Venus retrograde to do it. So we're going to wait a little while in the middle of August or so for that official opening and announcement, but I'll keep you guys posted in the meantime. You can also find me on Threads, on TikTok, and on Instagram. I hang out there a lot, and I'm very into communicating with people. So thank you guys so much. Best fortunes with all that's coming up this weekend. Use it for your benefit and thrive.